Hey, everybody, got a packed show for you on today's Locked On Utah Hockey Club episode. We've got a Penguins preview game coming up on a Wednesday night. Plus, we've got a Mikhail Sergachev and other injury updates coming your way. Barrett Hayton's reaction to being named the NHL's third star of the week. And there's some line shuffling afoot. We'll tell you all about it. Come on back and join us. This is the Locked On Utah Hockey Club podcast.
You are Locked On Utah Hockey Club, your daily podcast on the Utah Hockey Club, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Tom Callahan here with you. Thanks for joining me. Robin's got the day off, so it's you and me talking about things here, and I appreciate you being with me. Thanks for making us your first listen every single day when it comes to the Utah Hockey Club, and plenty to talk about on this show. We're going to talk about the Pittsburgh Penguins game that's coming up here Wednesday night, 7:30 start. National TV exposure for the Utah Hockey Club. Gotta love that. Plus, injury updates with Sergachev, Bortuzzo, Dursey, bunch of other guys we're going to talk about here. What's going on? Because we're seeing some line shuffling and some reorganization of the D pairs. So that's important. We're going to get into that as well. And then we're going to hear from Barrett Hayton, his thoughts from practice, and also what he thinks about being named the third star of the week on this past week. And you know what? Hayton's one of the guys that has been picking it up lately, and this Utah Hockey Club needs that to continue and actually kind of spread and become infectious to a bunch of the other players. So this is a good chance to do it, though, against the Pittsburgh Penguins, because I think a lot of people still think of the Penguins as that dominant Stanley Cup winning team that they haven't been for years. And the Penguins now languish near the bottom of the league. The only team in the Eastern Conference worse than the Pittsburgh Penguins is the Buffalo Sabres. It's not good for Pittsburgh right now. Their goal differential is a mighty, mighty -40. That's unbelievable for a Pittsburgh team with a Crosby and Malkin on it. Of course, they're older. The team has been banged up around them. Gensel is gone from that Penguins team. And it's kind of funny. Sidney Crosby still says, no, I'm happy. I don't want to go anywhere. And seems like Sid's going to be one of those guys who plays out his entire career with one organization, which is rare, but their glory days are well behind them. They're into the rebuild now. I think the last couple of years, they were trying so hard to keep the window open for Crosby, for Malkin, just trying to make it work. Letang for those guys. But the goaltending has been abysmal this year. They can't keep pucks out of the net. They're not scoring like they used to. And what it all amounts to is a good chance for the Utah Hockey Club to start a stretch now. The March 7th trade deadline. I know it says March. We're still in January. It's going to be here before you know it. And that March 7th trade deadline for the Utah Hockey Club looms important. Number one, because Bill Armstrong said, my players will determine whether or not we're buyers or sellers at the deadline. So the onus is on you. But number two, the fireworks have already begun. We had the trade last week involving the three different teams, and Colorado got a little weaker in the short term, I think, which doesn't hurt, but I think it's also important to look at divisionally. Right now, Colorado's not in a bad spot. Minnesota seems to be coming back to earth a little bit, and Kirill Kaprizov is back for them. Yeah, that's going to help them. They're getting a little healthier. Spurgeon's back. But I'm starting to wonder if Minnesota is going to turn into the postmortem on the season is a glorious start and a not so glorious finish. So the Wild are coming back to the pack. They really are. They're starting to fall back. And this is interesting because it may open a door. I'm not going to say the Wild are going to free fall out of the playoffs. That would take a lot, quite honestly, that I don't think is going to happen. But right now, Utah, which is at what we like to call NHL 500. If you hear NHL 500, the way that is spoken of is your wins and losses are the same, and then you've got these overtime points over here. So any team that is, in this case, 27, 27, and 5, NHL 500. Now, you've lost more than 27 games. That's what the 5 is. Those are your overtime points. But people say NHL 500 by way of denoting you got half those points. And so you're at 500, I guess, as far as point value goes, if that makes sense to you. So that's why they say NHL 500. That's become the thing to say the last couple of years. So it's an interesting phrase you're going to hear knocked about. But Pittsburgh, again, I think ripe for the picking. They're 2024 and 8, only 48 points on the year. I mentioned that minus 40 goal differential. That's crazy. They're not a good road team at 8, 14, and 5. All things that I think Utah can take advantage of. Now, again, Utah hasn't been great at home, 8, 11, and 4. But they're starting to pick it up. They're starting to score some goals. Yes, they didn't finish well against the Jets. And again, I think they ran out of gas against Ottawa. I think they just absolutely ran out of gas against the Ottawa Senators. To be expected, 3 games and 4 nights on the road. But really, if you look back at that stretch of 4 games, you beat Winnipeg once at home, you lose to them on the road. Okay, that's fair. Home and home split. Take that every day of the week. You beat Minnesota on the road. And I just wish they could have beaten Ottawa because that's the one team I said, hey, this is the beatable team. And again, until Utah's winning those games against the beatable teams, that's when you're not a playoff team yet. Once you start winning those games, then you become a playoff team in my eyes, in my estimation. So that's what I need to see this team start to prove is that they're going to be able to win those games, that they're going to be able to make those things happen and really get this team to where it needs to be playoff wise. So we're not there yet, Utah Hockey Club fans, but don't worry, we're going to get there. So we've got this Penguins preview we're talking about, and again, 7:30 start. So generally, when you see a 7:30 start, that is a national TV game. There's been a couple of those at Delta Center. So the way they space the games out is 2.5 hours from a 7 o'clock Eastern time start for the first game. 2.5 hours later is 9:30 Eastern, 7:30 Mountain. That's how they tend to determine the start time of those games. They used to do 3 hours and do like a show in between, depending on what the game would last. But they find that generally an NHL game goes to 15 to 20. They do 10 minutes of filler show now, and then they get to the puck drop for the 9:30. Sometimes if it goes long, which it does, they may join it in progress or come in a little late, but that doesn't tend to happen as much. So again, let's see. What else do we want to talk about here? Well, you know what? Actually, I want to get to the injury stuff and the line shuffling because I think that that's important. So why don't we go ahead and do that here? We're going to talk a little bit about what's going on with this Utah Hockey Club. And stay tuned. We'll be right back with that in just a moment. And today's show is brought to you in part by FanDuel. Super Bowl 59 is here. One game, two teams, endless possibilities, and there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even betting the coin toss, FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action. With live betting all game long, you can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. The live betting app feature lets you stay involved no matter what happens on the field, and the app is super easy to navigate. Plus, knowing that you can place a $5 bet and potentially win $200 in bonus bets for the Super Bowl, it's icing on the cake. Download the app or head to fanduel.com to get started. Bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's fanduel.com. Bet with FanDuel, official partner of Super Bowl 59. All right. So as we get back into it here, I want to talk a little bit about the injury situation, what's going on. I know everybody's been waiting on the Mikhail Sergachev update. I've got one of those for you. Also on the rest of the defense, getting a little bit healthier. But I guess the easy one to start with is Jersey, which is nowhere near ready to come back. I think we're still targeting April if we're being optimistic here. And of course, a lot could change depending on where Utah Hockey Club is in or out of the playoffs. Have they been buyers or sellers? All that kind of stuff. So players, I've seen it happen, and this is the hard part. Players try to rush back as soon as they can. Medical personnel often want to err on the side of caution. Somewhere in the middle is generally what you end up with for a return. But when it comes to a lot of different injuries that can recur and get worse, things like ankles, shoulders, concussions, things like that. You want to make sure that everything is as good as it's going to get before getting a guy back out there. And so I think there's no reason to rush with Dursey to get him back in the lineup. So take your time, get healthy, get well. That's what I would tell somebody. Bortuzzo's getting close. Hopefully back relatively soon here. And then Sergachev, was so Jersey. Oh, by the way, what I want to say about Jersey was out there in a non-contact jersey, and head coach Andre Tourny joked, "Yeah, he was out there screwing up a couple of drills." Um, it's obviously rusty, hasn't been on the ice in a while, so I thought that was a fun little dig there at Jersey. But Bortuzzo's close, and then so again talking about Sergachev, full participant and is now labeled a game time decision. So Sergachev, so to me, if it's a game time decision and he's been a full participant in practice, that generally means a guy's going to go, unless something happens in warmups, and that's why you always leave that door open. That's why you always see game time decision. Something could happen, and sometimes it does, but I think if he's been healthy enough to take practice and be full participant the last couple of days, I see no reason why Sergachev isn't out there 100% when it comes back around to game time against the Pittsburgh Penguins. So I think that one's important for this Utah Hockey Club. And so now what that gives you is the benefit of coming in against the Pittsburgh Penguins. You have back to your full complement, which is going to bring me around to talking about those line and defensive pairings, which is what I wanted to talk about. So, coming out of practice on Tuesday, let's start with the D pair. This is what we had. We had Sergachev and Marino. Remember, we talked about this preseason about thinking this was going to be the pair that we'd eventually end up with? As of now, it is. Here's another thing that I thought was really interesting is that Oli Mata and Nick DeSimone paired together. Raise your hand if you thought Nick DeSimone was going to slot into a 3-4 pairing. And now put your hand down because you're lying. I didn't see that. But he's out there with Mata, which is great. So Mata, DeSimone, and then Cole Kesselring is the next pairing up. So in the event that Sergachev goes, those are your 6D, in my opinion. And then it's Valimaki, Bortuzzo, and so Valimaki is your 7. Bortuzzo's not quite back yet, and Kolyachanik, Jersey was the other D pair at practice. So Kolyachanik obviously is not going to crack the lineup here unless something drastic happens, and Jersey is just kind of coming back. So Sergachev Marino, this is going to be our first real chance to get a good look at this. I hope, if Sergachev is going on Wednesday night, really going to be interested to see that pair. But I'm also going to be interested to see the Mata D Simone pair. Mata, before Marino had kind of jumped into the minutes munching role, that had been Oli Mata. So with him and D Simone paired together on the 3-4, I'm really interested to see their use case, what their zone starts are, and all of that. This is going to get interesting here. So I'm intrigued, to say the least, about that. So that is your defensive look, and then up front, so the forward lines have switched around. Now check this out. So left to right, you've got Keller, Cooley, and Schmaltz. That's a different look. Again, Keller, Cooley, and Schmaltz. Then you've got Kerfoot and or Michelli on the left side, Hayton and Doan getting top 6 minutes there. We talked about the week that Barrett Hayton's had, and we're going to hear from him a little bit later on in the show. Then you've got Carcone, McBain, and Kraus. So that's been shifted up as well. And then O'Brien, Stenland, and Bukestad, which I like that line. I'll be honest with you. I think that's a great line to have down there in the 4 spot. O'Brien, Stenlund, and Bukestad. I love it. McBain in the middle. And you know what? McBain's one of those guys, I think, along with Barrett Hayton, I really like the evolution of McBain this year and his continued move. And, it's kind of funny because Andre Tourny said at practice the other day that he likes McBain in the middle, has always liked McBain in the middle. And that was the plan, not to have him on the wing, to have him develop and grow into an NHL center, which takes time. I think we tend to think with prospects, we got to rush these guys in and they've got to be ready to go right away. And so few so few players are that gifted. It's not that easy. And so, we're seeing these guys develop even later on. I mean, a lot of times now we're talking about seeing players who peak more towards their late 20s, early 30s, as opposed to, and it still is the case with some prospects. If you're not panning out by 22, 23, you're over the hill because the next crop of kids is coming in behind you. So players get pushed out, I think, sometimes unfairly, and sometimes aren't given the time to develop. And that's why I like Utah Hockey Club playing a long game with a lot of their prospects. But McBain to the middle gives them also more options at center. Additionally, handling those responsibilities, you can always flip back to the wing. That's easy because it is less defensive responsibility. It is less awareness. It is much easier to play wing than center in the National Hockey League or at any level of hockey, just because the center has a lot of extra on them each and every shift. So if the coaching staff sees him developing and being able to step into that role, to me, that's a credit to his growth. And I really like that for him. So I think that that's good. I also think that, this team is deep when everybody is playing well. So again, the lines, I just want to go over them for you. It's Keller, Cooley, Schmaltz up top. And then you've got Kerfoot or Michelli on the left side with Hayton and Doan. And then Carconi, McBain, Kraus, and O'Brien, Stenlund, and Bukestad. Another point I wanted to make before we get to talking to Barrett Hayton is the question of a goaltending rotation. I guess I'll put rotation in air quotes. If you're watching, you see that, and if you're listening, I just told you I did it because I haven't actually seen Utah Hockey Club do a solid one for one rotation. They've gone back and forth a little bit, but that's never precluded a start here, a start there. I think Andre Tourney's been very situational with his starts and with his choosing. Um, Otherwise, you know, and I think the reason this question came up is because you look back, so Minnesota shutout, you automatically think whenever a goaltender gets a shutout, they tend to play the next game. But Utah didn't do that. And it's not a hard fast rule or anything like that. But usually, I mean, okay, the guy didn't let in a goal. We're going to roll him out the next game. But Utah went from Minnesota to Winnipeg, and even though it's a short trip, with the international travel, it can be a little longer, but it is back to back. I understand not coming back with Vejmelka and going with Ingram, who, by the way, earlier in the week had beaten Winnipeg on home ice. So the move made sense. And then for Sunday, you could pick either goaltender because you're, day off Saturday, you're traveling, you're able to rest, you get a little practice in whatever. But so the point I want to make is that Andre Tourdy says, no, I don't have a rotation. And I just kind of roll with what I'm feeling or what I see. And so again, I think it's been situational starts. And if I was going to say, and I know they're not necessarily going to make this reveal, but for me, I think Veg is taking the number one spot. And now, look, Ingram was out for a while with an injury, is kind of getting back in the groove of things, but Veggie's played so well this year. The numbers, the win loss is not there, but the save percentage and the goals against is. And in a contract year, this is why it's going to be interesting at the trade deadline for this team. In a contract year, Veg has played to a point where perhaps another NHL team that says we need a starting goaltender might splash out on this guy in the free agent market. And to me, that's tough. I would never sign a goalie based on 1 year, Philip Grubauer. I would not spend that kind of money on a guy. I just wouldn't. And this is me speaking as a goalie. I love it. Goalies go, secure the bag. Get out there, get the money. But I wouldn't do that based on one season. But there is the potential to capitalize because I think Veg could probably be had maybe 3.5. Something like that for a team, for a starter with a decent term on a contract for a guy who's not 30 years old yet, is left-handed, which some people think carries a mystique about it, as far as goaltending goes. What would you do on a better team? That's a big question because I think if your numbers are solid on a mid-pack to mid-lower pack team like Utah, and let's be fair, let's be honest, Utah is not a playoff team right now. They're not there yet. So if you put him on a higher up team, What does he look like? And who's looking for a starting goaltender? So we may hear him want to test the waters anyway when it comes to free agency in the summer. And it would behoove Utah to know the answer to that now. Because if they know the answer to that now, they can make an educated decision as to what to do. If he says, hey, I'm going to look around in the market in the summer because I think I can go somewhere number one and be a full time, full fledged starter instead of battling Connor Ingram. And number two, get some security for myself in a long term deal, which I'm not saying he couldn't do that in Utah. He probably could, but maybe he wants to go somewhere else. Maybe someone else says, hey, we need a goalie and we can maybe give you a chance to win. So I think if you look at that opportunity in your Vejmelka, you say, maybe I roll the dice on myself. So that becomes a real possibility. Um, there are a few teams that have rolled through goaltenders and have rolled through, different situations. The Leafs kept trying to sign guys that they hoped would be the answer. The Oilers kept trying to sign guys that they hoped would be the answer, and they haven't really found themselves that answer in net to put them over the top. Um, so I don't know. I mean, there's potential, and other teams could develop between now and then. You never know which goaltenders could get traded, which goaltenders could decide they want to leave. Um, so this could be an interesting situation. But if he tells them ahead of time, maybe Vejmelka becomes one of those goaltenders who gets traded. If he says I'm going to market in the summer anyway, he could become a rental to somebody else down the stretch, either as an insurance goaltender or as someone that could potentially earn a starting role this late in the season on another team and could carry them. So that's an interesting one. That's one to keep an eye on. And a little bit of a tangent I actually hadn't planned on covering in the show, but that's where it led me. All right, we're gonna hear from Barrett Hayton. Want to hear what he's got to say? Well, I'm third star of the week. I mean, not bad, right? But we'll have that moment here for you coming up right after this. And today's show is brought to you in part by Game Time. NFL playoff games, those are an unforgettable experience. I've been to a couple, of course, being a Bills fan, I've been to a lot of them. Again, we're not talking about what happened last Sunday against the Chiefs. That is football season is now over for me. But you know what? It brings fans together. It's a lot of fun. Gone with my brother. I remember going to one game for the Buffalo Bills, the New York Jets. It was the day after Christmas, and it was freezing. A lot of people stayed home that day. It was so cold. We had seats in the windy end of the stadium, and there is a windy end in Buffalo. But I mean, I'll always forget, always remember that day. I'll never forget that being there and just cheering and freezing, but watching the Bills beat the Jets. It was fantastic. And you know what? I'm looking forward to getting back to seeing some more Bills games next season and getting out there. I'd hope to go to the Super Bowl this year, but well, that's not quite gonna pan itself out now, is it? However, we're talking about game time, so I digress. Game time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for events even easier. It filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. I told you I did that at Fenway earlier this year. I really couldn't have been happier because I knew what I was getting for two things: toggling in the all in pricing, which was a huge help because I knew it was going to cost out the door. Boom. That's how I am. Buying a car, buying tickets. I want to know what my price is. So that was helpful. Toggle that on because it's not on by default. The other thing is you get the panoramic view of the seats. You know exactly what it's going to look like when you're sitting there. And so that's going to help you. And you browse through the deals. It's super easy. You could find great value for all kinds of seats around any venue. And they have super deals, which is actually how I found my tickets on that third base side, which is it highlights the best value in sections for you, makes it so much easier to find those seats. So that's what I did. The app's features like seat views, the all-in pricing. I love that. There's no surprise fees at checkout that way. So made the experience smooth. It was reliable. Tickets delivered right to my phone. That was awesome. Low price guarantee also gives you peace of mind. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download that Game Time app, create an account, and use our code Locked On NHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON NHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right. So as we come back here to wrap things up, by the way, if you're still here, hit the subscribe button, will you? And give us a like. If you give us the thumbs up on a YouTube, it helps us with the algorithm. It also helps your algorithm to find you more great hockey content. We appreciate you being here with us. Tom Callahan here with you. Robin Leonio's got the show off. So I'm just carrying you on through here today. And real quick, let's get to Barrett Hayton and we'll get to his thoughts and comments here at the NHL's third star of the week.
Of the week feel.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice recognition to get. It's not really something you're like looking for or anything, but yeah, I mean, nice recognition.
Beyond the point, just how do you feel like your game has been building the past couple months?
Yeah, I think just kind of building consistency, trying to have a positive impact on the game every night, and I think I've done a pretty good job with that. Just overall, yeah, I guess just consistency. Obviously, nice to produce more and score some goals and stuff like that lately, but I feel like it's kind of a culmination of my game building.
How about on the defensive side?
Yeah, I think same thing. Just obviously on the road, like being reliable against all matchups, being trusted to be out there in all situations. That's something I've always taken a lot of pride in, and yeah, I think that's something each guy in that room also takes a lot of pride in. You know, you're going to get tough matchups. You're going to be playing against dangerous players, and being able to manage the game and ultimately have a positive impact is huge.
How do you like playing with Don Michelli, and how do you feel like that's benefited each of your individual games?
Yeah, both guys I love playing with. Michelli and I had played together a bit in the past. We've known each other for a long time, and Donor, I really admire his game. All around, he's a smart player, works extremely hard. He's really good inside in the offensive zone, and that's something I admire and take some things from him, and I think we got good chemistry around there, and also just both two guys away from the ice that get along with really well and are good buddies with.
Before Nations break is kind of creeping up, just what's the team's mindset in this push before, the real second?
Yeah, I think we're locked in for each game. Obviously that's kind of a section of the season where you want to be going full steam ahead heading into that. But we got seven games before that. Each are huge games, and we all know that. And we got to be urgent every night.
Is it easy to get up for games against Sidney Crosby and the like?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's easy to get up for any game. We're fighting every night. We know how important each game is. Yeah, I mean, Sidney Crosby, a guy I grew up admiring. Yeah, definitely cool.
Does it feel real when you're on the ice, sharing the ice with a guy like that you grew up watching?
I think maybe like the first time you play, or maybe your first year when you're on that, you're a little, maybe more so going into the games. I think kind of when you're on the ice, we're all hockey players, we're all competing. Doesn't matter who it is on the other side, but yeah, I think it's really a guy that you got to be aware of. Obviously on the ice, he's such a good 200-foot player, and yeah, just being aware of and competing against.
What do you remember about his goal in 2010 in the Olympics?
Yeah, I think I remember I was on my way to a minor hockey game. We were on like a coach bus or whatever you want to call it, whatever it's called down here, and we were streaming it on the TVs on there, and yeah, that's pretty crazy. Definitely a vivid memory.
All right, so that's it for this one. That was Barrett Hayton. Our thanks to Barrett for joining us here on the program, and also want to say thanks to you for joining us here on the program and making us your first listen every single day. Hey, it's not too late. You're not out of it for fantasy hockey yet, but if you need to catch up on what's going on, check out our Locked On Fantasy Hockey Show. Great advice, some sleepers in there. Whether you're in a deep league, a shallow league, doesn't matter. Keeper league, redraft every year. It's a great show to keep you up to date on what's going on and help you find maybe somebody who could put you over the top in your league. So, all right. Well, we will end up talking to you next time. And again, 7:30 puck drop at Delta Center for this game against the Pittsburgh Penguins. And you know what? If you do have a chance to go down there and see Sidney Crosby, even an aging Sidney Crosby play, worth it. These are once in a generation players. And I think if you can get down there to see Crosby, it is absolutely worth it to see a great like that in action. So I haven't always been the biggest Sidney Crosby fan. I wouldn't even still say I'm a fan, but I certainly respect what Crosby has done as far as body of work. Hockey Hall of Famer for sure. So just my 2 cents on that. All right, we will talk to you next time with our post-game wrap-up of the Penguins game. We'll have some more news and notes. Hopefully, Utah comes through this one healthy as well. So, all right, everybody, take care. We'll talk to you next time.